here. Okay, done. Boom. Hello everybody, welcome to the Clockwork Game Dev Show. My name is Keith Burgun. What are we doing today? We're looking at all this stuff here, not this. Schedule. So today, we're not doing Fantasy General. We've swapped these. This has to come up soon, maybe next week. Who knows? Maybe we will play some Fantasy General today. But the main thing we want to talk about is structure. So these two are actually switched. Today is a design discussion day, and yeah, they're backwards there. So we wanted to talk about structure. Why is this good? Let's also write difference between structure and systemic rules. Let's go through the chat and read some of these chats. Clockwork Game Dev Show. There was lots of chats. I like how why it's good is still blank. Yeah, we haven't filled that out yet. I think though that I don't think there's that much disagreement. Maybe that it's that it is good. But let me. So last night we had a bunch of what's it called? Good kind of just questions before all the chatting happened. So I want to go back up to those. Okay. Oh, maybe they were before this. Oh, here we go. Here's a couple. Hey, no more birds. How's it going? Yo, Daryl Liel. So I'm still a little sick. I'm getting there. I'm like 80% better, something like that. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. I like this. Which of the rules in League are structural? I like that. Let's just copy paste a few of these as things to discuss. I don't disagree that it's good when it's good. Right. Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, just to quickly answer that, and I've sort of talked about that a little bit on chat, but yes, structure can make your game a lot worse. But it's like saying game design can also make your game a lot worse. If you start with a very, I tend to think that we have very under-designed games that are, so you can imagine a system where you can just shoot at each other. Look at, Doom or Quake. Quake Deathmatch, like Quake 1 Deathmatch. Like, you literally just have an arena, you have health and damage and all that kind of stuff. Steven had a good question just before we started. I will check that out. More details, structure, systemic rules, right? We will talk about that. What qualifies a rule as systemic as opposed to local? That's a good question. We'll talk about that. Does it have to touch every part of the system? What if a rule only affects a single part of the system? Yeah, that's all. These are all good, I think. These are all good questions. Maybe we should make these each their own thing. There was a good question just before I started. Was there? Oh yeah. If you have two rules, Rule A and Rule B, let's answer this too. So we will get to all of these questions. See that space? That's what happened in Dream Daddy yesterday. This right here. Twitch is not doing great? Oh no. Is it Is it on my end? Am I doing something wrong here? Wait. I'm looking through my things. Everything seems to be okay. Stream quality is good. Hold on, let me like close some crap. It doesn't hurt to, it never hurts to close some shit that you're not using. Like Steam stuff. Okay. All right, so let's go through this stuff. Like, I want to, before I answer this stuff, like, starting point for why I want to talk about this in the first place. We're, early in the process of learning to design games. Our existing systems are, in my opinion, extremely under-designed. Which we can talk about more what that means. So I'm advocating for something for things to change in a particular direction going forward, which may not have immediate results, but which will, in a medium, long term, lead to dramatically better games. That's just kind of like the starting point for it. Hey Sebastian, how's it going? Yeah, I'm almost better. I'm excited to be all better. Structure right now seems a lot more central to your design framework than Clockwork game design pattern. Yeah, it is more. I mean, yeah, it's very fundamental. I think actually it's my first book was more about this kind of stuff. I don't think I used this terminology exactly, but yeah, this is below Clockwork game design. It's below core mechanisms, that sort of thing. This is like really like fundamentally, how designed are your systems? I really think that's another way of talking about this. Okay. Well, I don't think this is new for me in terms of like ideologically. I think I felt this way for a very long time about video games, but I'm talking about this more because as I try to talk about higher level things, I run into obstacles that we need to go back to like this in order to address those obstacles, I find. All right, so people in chat already read this. What is structure? It exists in the rules of the games when they have high interconnectivity or high coupling. Systems depend on each other in multiple ways. Grids are a basic kind of structure that many games use, but having a grid alone isn't necessarily much structure. Yeah, we'll kind of come back to this maybe, but I'd like to hit up these questions. What is not structure? Let's put this later. Let's answer this later, because I actually think that's we'll do that at the end. Although we already have some answers there. I'm curious why you think structure will result in dramatically better games. Yeah, it's because I believe in game design, basically. I think that game design will... I think that I've seen it happen. We've all seen it happen when you make... So structured games are just more designed games. I was talking about the example of like Quake Deathmatch, and how later FPSs had things like, in Counter-Strike, they have like the bomb, right? And that whole dynamic of like some team has the bomb. One team, first of all, there's teams. That's a structural thing. Secondly, one team has this particular objective and the other team has an asymmetrical objective from that. And then later we started getting things like capture points and the cart in TF2. So we're going in this direction. I'm actually just describing what is already happening. So I actually don't think, like, some of my theory is like, someday we're going to do blankety blank and it's kind of like theoretical. This is not even very theoretical because it's all already happening. Going from RTS to MOBA games is more structural. Going from Magic to something like Gwent is more structural. You know, I mean, I'm not saying across the board. I think there are some games that are actually, well, we'll talk about more. I don't want to get ahead of myself too much here. Oh yeah, this is another question. But I'm trying to figure out a good order to answer these in. Difference between structure and systemic rules. Okay, so I do want to talk about this. Yeah, let's do this. Well, whatever. Okay, difference between structure and systemic rules. There's not a massive difference, but in most cases, you know, generally speaking, systemic rules can be used somewhat interchangeably with structure. Interchangeably is a word. Oh, okay, fine. However, there are some some systemic rules are more or less structural than others. For example, the health system in Magic and the what's it called? The gem pile system in Puzzle Strike are both systemic rules, but one is more structural than the other. What was it? The Codex Patrol Zone in Codex is more structural than either. Now I know that I'm talking about this before. I'm like really. These are just examples. More design effort and more structure don't seem like they go hand in hand. Not always. That's true. Because, like, for example, Magic the Gathering has had a shit ton of design work done for it because of how many cards there are. But those cards are not structural. Those are componential rules. If you have two rules, rule A. Oh, this was your question right here, right? Okay, so Steven asked this, so let's hit this one up next. If you have two rules, rule A and rule B, and A does not lead to an increase in structure, but B does lead to an increase in structure, then what does B do that A does not do? Right. Did anyone read the coupling article I posted on Discord? Can you repost it in the chat here? I'll open it up. And we can take a peek through that as well. Okay, so I think that it is coupling is related to the answer to this question. So let's take some examples. Taking specific examples. Let's say that rule A is health in Magic the Gathering, and rule B is the patrol zone in Codex. Because I think that rule A does lead, well, actually, to be specific, it's not, I wouldn't say that, actually I have a little bit of an objection to the formation of this question, because it's not about does not lead to an increase in structure. That's, you know, I guess if I'm going to answer this really literally, the literal answer to this question is kind of disappointing because it's rule B is sort of like a systemic rule, and rule A is a componential rule. That's like the direct answer to this question, but I think the spirit of this question is more like this. And rule A leads to less of an increase. Yeah, lesser and greater degree of structure than B. Let's just say that. What does B do that A does not do? Now this is more interesting, I think, because because now we're getting into the spirit of systemic rules, and we're just talking about the world of systemic rules now. Okay. It'd be kind of cool to number these so we could like talk about these, because this could be like 2A and this could be like 2B. And maybe, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so this could be 1. Well, actually, well, sure, this could be 0. Yeah. Okay. Rule A is health is in Magic the Gathering. Rule B is the patrol zone. All right, so why? This is kind of what I wanted to talk about on the stream today, because I think it's kind of complicated and weird. So why? Because I think we all agree that there's a difference. There's something different about like something like health, which is just kind of like a simple integer. So let's compare them. Like health. What does health do? What does health do? Determines. Let's. I kind of want to make this. Well, nah, that's a bad idea. Let's put this in its own little box here. Insert table 1 by 1. Boop boop boop. Okay. What does health do? Determines the win condition. It's sort of like a tracker for health is score. That's a really good way of putting it. Tracker of score, basically, which is related to the win condition. It also, though, is a resource that interacts with specific components. Some creatures, spells do more and less damage. Players can sacrifice health to achieve other, short-term objectives. Yeah, it affects player behavior, but that's kind of broad. If you're low on health, you will act differently than when you have high health. That's true, although that's more of like a dynamic than a rule, right? Like that's a dynamic that happens, but it's not. That's not a rule, I guess. The way it interacts with the other rules. Yeah, you're talking about more like strategy on the strategy layer. This is roughly, I think, what health does. The only HP that matters is the last one, common saying in Magic the Gathering. Yeah. I mean, I think, and that's a, right. I think that's tracker of score, basically. Right. And I want to add low coupling, I guess, with the greater system. And I'll put Noblebird's quote in here. The only HP that matters is the last one. This has been a critique of mine about hit points for a very long time. I do talk to Evazair once in a while. I could ping him and let him know. Maybe he'll pop in. Let's see. Yeah, I'll send him a PM. But I just talked to him yesterday because I was asking him, I forgot the term coupling. I'm not like a computer science person, but I remembered that there was a term like that seemed useful. But actually, I think I remember that Eva Zayer said that he was specifically not interested in game design discussions. Anyway, probably don't need to go over this on stream. But yeah, somebody can invite him if you want. I think he told me that he was like specifically not interested in game design discussions. Anyways, okay. So that's what health does. What does the patrol zone do? So actually, yeah, let's sort of score these. Low coupling. This is kind of actually this I don't even think this should count as its own bullet point. Okay, so low coupling, resource that interacts with specific components, and this we could say is like moderate coupling, maybe even high, right? Let's say moderate high coupling, because a lot of things interact with health. You know, like a lot of spells, creatures, it's all just about the health, right? Like that's all kind of, I mean, it depends. Well, it depends on the deck, but ultimately, if the deck doesn't interact with the health, it's not going to win. So all decks have to at least ultimately interact with that. But I guess you're saying they don't interact with it at all until like the very end, at which point, yeah, I guess that would be kind of a lower amount of coupling. It's a dial you can manipulate as a designer to affect game length. Yes, that's game length. I guess we could say indicates or like game length is a function of this. Is a function of health, and that would probably be moderate coupling. Or high even, I'm not sure, somewhere in that ballpark. There's some weird magic cards like if this card gets 100 tokens on it, you win the game. Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, it's Magic, so of course there is all that kind of shit, but we're speaking generally here. Game length is high coupling. Okay, I could see that. Let's just write moderate to high coupling. Well, I don't know that game length is high coupling because well, whatever. We'll leave it as moderate to high for now. I could see arguments either way there, though. But that's fine. We can go with that. So, what is the patrol zone? Has everyone played Codex here? We're gonna do Codex. I think Steven and I at some point on stream. Actually, TTS would be cool. To do it on because I know TTS a lot better than I know the other thing. Okay, what does the patrol zone do? So it would be kind of cool to bring up a thing with Codex to show people the patrol zone, just so that we have some idea. Codex patrol zone. What happens if I look this up? Here we go. I thought there was an article about this. Combat in the patrol zone. Right. Good. Graphical image that I wanted to show people. So picture like Magic the Gathering, right? You're like playing cards to creatures to the table and they like fight each other. It sort of has that basic thing going on. There's a lot of other differences, but there is, you know, this basic thing of I have a base. Health is in Codex. Hopefully that won't be too confusing because we're not talking about the health right now. We're just talking about these two specific mechanisms. Health and this system, which is the patrol zone. So basically, every player has this little board in front of them in Codex. And when you play creatures, at the end of the turn, you can assign creatures to these slots. And these slots give you different benefits, bonuses based on what the other player does on their turn. So there's an inherent taunt rule, which is that there's actually two layers of taunt. So let's say you have a bunch of creatures. You have like 2 or 3 creatures just on your table, and then you have one in this elite spot, one in the scavenger spot, and one in the squad leader spot. The player must first attack the squad leader if there's a squad leader. That's their only target that they can hit. The only one that they can target. And then beyond that, if there's no squad leader, they must attack. If there's anyone in the patrol zone, they have to attack one of those. So the patrol zone is like this inherent taunt. You know how like in Magic and Hearthstone and stuff, some units have a taunt component, property. In this, that's a systemic rule. It's been converted to a systemic rule. And players have to attack something in the patrol zone first, and if there's something in the squad leader role, they have to attack the squad leader first. So that's a systemic rule that affects this. And then on top of that, the unit in the elite spot gets +1 attack. So if something attacks it, it attacks, counterattacks in the same way as Hearthstone works, doing 1 more damage than it would normally do. Scavenger, when it dies, you get a gold. So you put a unit in there, it dies on the opponent's turn, you get a gold. This one, you draw a card. And this one has something called Resist 1, which means that the opponent has to pay a gold to the bank in order to target the thing on the lookout. So I personally feel like these rules are a little weird. I mean, they end up working and they're cool and whatever. But I love the 2 layers of taunt. I think that's a great example of a systemic rule, something that's structural, and it's in the game. It's in every single game of Codex. It's part of the fabric of Codex, and that's kind of what I mean about like building these holistic systems. And a really good example, I think, of a systemic or structural rule that is way more structural than health. So what does the patrol zone do for this game? It creates space, I guess you could say, but it's not space as in like a grid, and it's not space as in like a I guess we should even say like spatial relationships, where some units are in front of or other units, which because of the layers of taunt going on. You shouldn't treat coupling as has high coupling with each thing. Coupling should be how many things do I touch? Okay. Point taken. Okay, so the patrol zone creates spatial relationships where some units are in front of other units. Creates, modifies the valuation of attacking certain creatures. So for example, that's one of the things I also love about the patrol zone is, you have a deck of cards and they each, let's say you have like a 1/1 creature or a 2/3 creature, and maybe it has some ability, some special property, whatever. Without the patrol zone, if you have a deck and I have a deck and we play a few matches, there's kind of like a bit of a fixed valuation of like, oh wow, he played that card. I sort of like know what the value of that card is and whether I should attack it right now, what I will get for attacking that versus what I will lose. Whereas this adds like a modifier level on that. So it's like, oh wow, now that 1/1 creature is now a 2/1 because it's in the elite slot. So, and you only have 1 elite slot. So that's another component of it that's structural. Has like specific and finite slots or spaces that units can go into. So this is kind of, spatiality is sort of like related, I think. But yeah, specific or finite slots or spaces that units can go into, and that's also important. Part of this structuralness is a specificity. I hate that word, but I hate saying it. But I just kind of want to write the word specificity somewhere. Like related words, maybe. Specificity, spatiality can be related. A few other words will come up and we can just throw them in there. That's some of the impressionistic work that I think Stephen maybe hates about this kind of stuff. But I find it useful. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, as long as we all kind of like understand this idea, however we get there, I think it's good. Specific or finite spots or spaces that units can go into. All right, so this would be. Now I'm wondering, Stephen, when you said high coupling with each thing, coupling should be how many things do I touch? It's not just about touching things. It's also about like I think that at least what I'm trying to talk about is it's one thing to touch something. It's another thing to like really change and really interact with something. You could say that actually interactivity, interactivity, as in between game elements, between objects. Ripple effects, yeah, kind of. Yeah, ripple effects. Just put that in like italics or something. So yeah, what does this patrol zone do? Spatial relationships. This is like high coupling because it significantly affects the meaning of various, the strategic meaning of various cards, components. Modifies the valuation of attacking certain creatures. I would say this is also high coupling. Specific finite slots or spaces that units can go into, high coupling. And now here's the other thing about that I want to go back into with what is structure. A systemic rule affects major parts of the game all of the time. Because these let's write like all or almost all of the time, something like that. Because these rules are a holistic part of the game, as opposed to a componential rule such as Hearthstone's Taunt. Or actually, Taunt is not even a good example because Taunt appears so often. I don't know. There's like, it's about providing possible ways games elements can interact with. I'm not sure I understand your question. Let's just write like, such as some specific ability on a Hearthstone card. They have a multiplying effect on the system depth, or we could say like potential depth. So componential rules or low structure systemic rules, see next question, have something more like an additive effect, by contrast. So every time you add a card to Hearthstone, that is more rules, but it's more like you added like a +10 to the system. Whereas adding something like this to the game has a multiplying effect on everything. Taunt's not a bad example. It does show up everywhere, but it has to because it's componential, but it's important. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I almost would say that Taunt in Hearthstone is almost more systemic because it appears on so many cards. It's kind of like, it's sort of in a gray area there a little bit. Same with maybe something like, what's that horrible thing where you can play the card and it immediately can act? Yeah, it is definitely a spectrum. So let's make a note about that. Note, structurality. I made a word. Is on a spectrum. As is componential versus systemic. Right. And not binary. Charge, yeah. They call it something different in every one of these stupid fucking collectible card games. It's very annoying. Just call it one thing. Call it made the game worse ability. Okay. So, okay, we've answered this. Let's go through these questions here. I may need to pause to get some water. Somehow I've forgotten to get water. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna do that really quick. Magic probably has the patent. That's actually a really good point. So I'm just gonna scroll over here. I'm gonna take a very, very quick break while I grab some water. And if you have questions, comments, write them in the chat and I'll catch up momentarily. I'll be back in like literally 1 minute. Be right back. All right. I am back. Boop. Okay. Thanks for sticking around. Let's see what we got in the chat. I think you have to blame Magic the Gathering for every other game calling it something different because they're like brutal with their patents. That's the worst thing I ever heard. Although, I mean, ideally that would just make people not make more collectible card games, but sadly that's not how it worked out. Same with tapping. Charge is definitely worse in Hearthstone because you can't interact on your opponent's turn. Right, there's no like reactions or whatever. It's also worse because you don't declare defenders in Hearthstone, so they just kill your important minion, and that's that. Well, they added Rush, which you can only attack minions, not the player. Right. I'm not entirely convinced patents would protect this particular case. I'm not either. I thought that patents... So patents, you know, I mean, patents will protect you if you have like kick-ass lawyers and you're like Disney or you're like EA. I'm sure that they could patent something and actually protect the patent. But generally patents don't apply to game design rules. All right, so let's keep going with these things here. What qualifies a rule as systemic as opposed to local? Let's answer each of these questions. As opposed to local. I mean, we can sort of just say like high coupling, interaction with more of a multiplicative effect. I just remember hearing that no other card can use tapping. Yeah. There's a few things like that in video games. Like, for a long time, Nintendo had the patent on the fucking D-pad, right? Like, ridiculous. But, I mean, the company of that size actually can protect their patents, and so, yeah, it's really just, like, this inequality thing. Is it somehow like baseball versus basketball? I'm not an expert in both. Basketball is quite continuous. Baseball has more explicit structure. That's true. Not just by the game field, but by the rules. Yeah, that's true. I mean, baseball, I have so many negative things to say about baseball. It is very structured, and actually, it's a good example of. Let's add one more question. When is structure not a good thing? I'm just going to make a quick note. Baseball, to talk about baseball, and also escape the omnicronom. Because I think those are both examples of something being more structural than some of their related games, but being also worse. And we'll talk about that. Okay. What qualifies a rule as systemic as opposed to local? High coupling. I mean, I don't know what local exactly means here. I guess local is kind of like not super well defined. You can just call haste in all games. It's haste in codex. Okay. That's fine. I really wish that no one would put that into their games because it violates the information horizon, but what are you going to do? Treat local as non-systemic. Okay, let's do that instead. Well, I mean, this is actually a lot easier then. A non-systemic rule would be a componential rule. Or a very simple rule that that rarely interacts with other things. So let's see if we can. Here's a good example. A good example of a systemic rule. Oh wait, maybe this should go somewhere else. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. To this here. Let's add some more here. A good example is safeties in football, in American football. Safeties, or safety, I think it's called, in American football might be a good example of a systemic rule that adds very little structure because I don't even know if this is the best example. We could probably come up with... All right, chat, here's a mission for you guys. Figure out... I know these exist, but I won't necessarily be able to think of one right now. But think about a kind of rule in a strategy game that is systemic, but that rarely comes into play and only affects like a very particular thing. And so, en passant in chess, that's a pretty good one. A systemic rule that adds very little structure because of how rarely it appears in play. We should actually write it is likely to occur based on the rules, right? Because it is for those who don't know, a safety in American football is, you're on offense. You're generally pushing the ball forward down the field. You're trying to reach the opponent's end zone, at which point you can get a touchdown, right? Which is like 6 points, usually 7 because you can get an extra point afterwards. But a safety is... So it's actually possible while you're on offense to lose yardage if your quarterback falls back behind the line of scrimmage and then gets sacked by like a defense lineman or something who runs over the line of scrimmage and tackles you back behind the line of scrimmage. It's actually possible to lose yardage. And this does happen sometimes in like sack plays and things like that. And that's sack, S-A-C-K, not like sacrifice plays. I can show you quarterback sack. I just want to see if there's like an image, like a chart or something. Well, actually, let's look up like line of scrimmage. Because I don't know if everyone knows the rules of football. Well, here, this is not that bad. Yeah, this will be useful. I don't know what the fuck this is. But anyways, so you have your quarterback, right? He's here. This is the line of scrimmage. This is like where the ball is between plays. So the quarterback falls back and is trying to do like a pass or something, right? A penalty kick is not a bad example, although that's not that rare. And I think penalty kick is one of those things that like, even if it is rare that it happens, the threat of it actually always is continuing to like what's it called? To change behaviors and stuff. Anyways, when the quarterback falls back, a player can run around and tackle them, and they can lose yardage. The idea of a safety is that you lose so much yardage that you actually get tackled back in your own end zone, which is like super rare. Like let's see how often safety in NFL. 14.31. Safeties are the least common method of scoring in American football, but are not rare occurrences. I mean, I think they're kind of rare, but maybe I'm wrong. I want to see the stats. Oh, here we go. Has occurred once every 14 games. That's rare, okay? Once every 14 games, this thing happens. Yeah, that's pretty darn rare. So it doesn't affect things very often because the other thing is you don't want to be losing yardage anyway. So the difference between this and a penalty kick is always affecting behavior, right? Because you don't want to do a thing that would lead the opponents to get have the ability to do a penalty kick. So that's going to be constantly changing behavior. The safety is not going to be changing behavior because even if you only lose a few yardage, that's always bad for you because you only have so many downs. You have to make 10 yards within 4 plays, basically. They call them downs. And so if you're losing yardage, that's already bad. You don't need the safety rule at all. This rule could just completely be deleted and it would basically not change football at all. Sports are the worst. Anyways, what's it called? Safety in football. Now, it is a systemic rule, but it adds very little structure because of how rarely it is likely to occur based on the rules. So that's another criteria that you can use to distinguish between a systemic rule and a what's it called? Structural rule, right? So safety does not add a lot of structure. In fact, safety adds very little structure because of how. Yeah, okay. I think we all understand that, right? I think this is a very good distinguishing point between these two things: systemic rules and structural rules. So maybe we can add that to our definition. Structure is also what's it called? Distinct from systemic rules because, or like structural rules are also distinct from the systemic rules because what do all these criteria have in common? I mean, Sebastian says, I understand. I just thought of it because it's not directly connected to normal play. The normal play will be paused. It's not going to happen while people are playing out their normal strategies. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, but I would say that the penalty kick is, just to be clear, more of a structural rule than the safety, but I don't think it's a particularly structural rule either. So what do all these criteria have in common? That's a good question. Let's see if we can. I think Steven wants to have a very simple answer, which we may or may not be able to produce. But I would just like to say that whether or not we can produce a simple answer, as long as we understand the concepts, I think it can be very useful. Okay, Structural rules are also distinct from systemic rules because structural rules are likely to affect many things. High coupling. Actually, wait a second. This is already here, isn't this? Systemic rule almost all the time. So that's already there. We already kind of have this. Penalty kick only exists because soccer is a physical sport. Yeah, that's true. You wouldn't need that in a digital game. You could just disallow the like tackling and other behaviors that would lead to a penalty kick. It's funny actually. I thought about the game Super Mario Strikers, which added this feature. It was a soccer game, but it added if you tap the right trigger, your character would auto aim and just demolish another character nearby them. And so if they had the ball, forget it. They're totally knocked the fuck out. And they like counterbalance that. So first of all, that's a terrible rule. That shouldn't be in the game. But then they like counterbalanced it by adding items. So if you get tackled like that, you get an item. It's like some random Mario Kart item that like, screws over the other team or whatever. And it's funny because we didn't like the items, so we would turn the items off. But then you could still do the hits, and it just became this completely absurd thing where we were just tackling each other constantly. Yeah, that's not really directly related to this, but okay, so can we simplify this? I do like the idea of trying to simplify this. I mean, this bold sentence kind of does it, doesn't it? I remember an old hockey video game where fighting was a big part of it, even though it happens to be contrary to the rule of hockey. I mean, a lot of old hockey video games are that way. One of my favorites was ice hockey for NES. Fighting was a big part of it. And then some games I think did a better job with that, like Monster League. Wasn't there a Monster League hockey game, or am I thinking of the Technos hockey game? I don't remember. So I don't know. Let me know if you think this is a good boiling down. It might not be, but I don't know. Maybe it's like, let's continue going through some of these questions. Does it have to touch every part of the system? No. It is not binary. The more parts of the system it touches, the more structural it has the capacity to be. What about my LCG example up above? Did I miss that? Let's see. Oh yeah, I did miss that. Sorry about that. So suppose we have an LCG like Netrunner, and suppose it's just really well and tightly designed, but it's primarily componential rules on the cards. But those componential rules are designed and interact with it in such a way that you almost always have something like Taunt or maybe something similar to the Patrol Zone. What is this? So, I mean, Netrunner has a lot of structure. We can talk about structure in Netrunner somewhere. So I don't know if Netrunner's maybe the best example because it is so structural. I wonder if like Gwent is a better example. I think I know what you're getting at. Yeah, I mean, so I think my answer is that Netrunner, if we're talking about Netrunner is a step in the direction that I'm calling for. It is a more structural game than, you just mean an LCG. What are some other LCGs? Like Dominion. Is Dominion an LCG? I think it's considered a LCG, right? Limited card game, isn't that what that stands for? So you have like the sets of cards. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what LCG really means then. Let's look it up. The living, that's right, living card games. Oh, yeah. Okay. I have played Arkham Horror, but not Arkham Horror the card game. Because after I played the first Arkham Horror, I was not interested in playing other Arkham Horrors. I thought it was about limited amount of cards too, but living sort of sounds like it's just never going to end. But I do know that Netrunner ended, right? Dominion's just a card game. We've been at this point multiple times. Limited amount of cards, I thought, like Magic or Hearthstone type of thing, but no deck building. Y'all are giving me different explanations here. Can I read this? Is this going to be accurate or is this wrong? It's like a CCG, but the packs are not random. Okay. So that doesn't really tell me much about the system, though, right? Like the systemic rules could be anything. Is Codex an LCG? Let's talk about specific games. You can buy all the cards at once. Correct. Right. Fine. Yeah. It means it's Magic, but you have all the cards at once. Okay. So what's the question about your LCG example? Because, like, to me, Netrunner is a good instructive example of a more systemic game than Magic. And an example of where I think things need to go. Let's just read this real quick. Innovative fixed distribution method that breaks away from the traditional collectible card game model. While LCGs still offer the same dynamic, expanding, and constantly evolving gameplay that makes LCGs so much fun, bleh. They do away with the deterrent of the blind buy purchase model, fucking nightmare, has burned out so many players. It's not that it burned out players, it's that it was always terrible even the very first time that they ever did it. The end result is an innovative mix that gives you the best of both worlds. Ugh. Okay, if you have all the cards and the rules are componential, but very well designed around those componential rules, yeah, I mean, I think, so like let's think about, here's a good thought experiment. Actually, this is a really good thought experiment I just thought of. Dragon Bridge. Some of you might know the rules to Dragon Bridge. Action deck. Is this componential or systemic complexity? And we can also go even further with that, like a role selection game like Puerto Rico. Are the roles componential or systemic complexity? Right? Because like those roles they're kind of cards. The Dragon Bridge action deck has 17 cards in it, some of which are doubles. And so the thing I'm trying to say here is cards doesn't mean components necessarily, right? I mean, cards are ultimately just a rectangle on paper, some stuff on it. So this is a long way of saying, what if you, Steven says, the question is, what if you have componential rules that give all the properties of structure? They're not componential rules in my opinion. I think you're thinking they're componential rules in that case because they're cards. But I think if they're actually giving the properties of structure, they're systemic rules. So Dragon Bridge's action deck, can we agree that this is systemic complexity? Like, or at least, certainly leaning, or at least, certainly more systemic than componential. Role selection in Puerto Rico, absolutely systemic complexity, right? That doesn't make sense. What doesn't make sense? I guess now I sort of need a definition of componential. Okay, let's talk about componential versus systemic. Because I think there's a relationship here between this and the structural question. Because it's blurry and continuous, or on a spectrum. But things are more componential when they are, like if the Dragon Bridge action deck was 100s of cards, what would that be? I think if it were hundreds of cards, it would become more componential. They're more like components in that case, because each card affects, assuming we're talking about they have hundreds of different cards, right? Each card would have specific things on it. If every card in the game is unique, there's no keywords or whatever, but the cards are highly interconnected and have lots of relationships with other cards. I think that just may be a gray area example. But I think the fact that you were able to produce that gray area example shows that you do understand the concept. Like, I think you're specifically asking me about that because you can see what is meant by componential and by systemic, and you're thinking of some example that actually is kind of in the middle. And I think that's that is in fact like a. It depends on the specifics probably. If they are componential, is this structure? Let's see. Chess pieces are more componential than checkers pieces. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, so again, like you're asking questions like, is this structure? But it's like, structure is not binary. It is structure to some extent, you know? Even Magic, which to me, Magic is like the most unstructured, most componential game that I can think of just about. It's like the polar example. Maybe you can come up with better example. Maybe Flux might be more. I'm not sure. It's been a long time since I played Flux. But even Magic has some structure, like we've talked about. Health is a structural rule. Something like these, like Taunt or Land is certainly a structural rule. The whole mana system. So it's not about like, is it structural or not? It's about how structural is it. Every time I ask a question, I tend to get to clarify. The answer is always some maybe or sometimes. Yeah, well, because it's spectral. You know, it's not binary. Like maybe that's frustrating, but that's the truth. And it also depends on the specifics of a specific game. So that's some of the problem with some of these examples. Like I like this question someone asked. If the Dragon Bridge action deck was hundreds of cards, what would that be? Or Steven's follow-up question, what if every card in the game is unique? And I have a hard time answering that because I think it really depends on the specifics. If they're highly interconnected and have lots of relationships with each other, it could be that those cards... here's a good example, actually, of a actual example. What was it? Pandemic cards, right? So in Pandemic, let's talk about just the location or the cards. Either one, the scary virus deck or the player deck. Both of those have Pandemic cards are very systemic. I forget how many there are. It feels like there's like something like 50 or 60 or somewhere in that ballpark. But they really just have a location on most of them. I would say maybe the special actions, the special event cards. Special event cards are more componential probably because they first of all, they don't come up very often. They have some very specific action that you can do just once. Whereas the Pandemic cards, let's see if we can get the action reference card. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah. Perfect. This is what I wanted. Yeah. Oh, actually, this was not really what I wanted. I wanted the other side of this. Well, anyways, there's numerous things that you can do with a pandemic card. See you, Steven. Thanks for coming by. I do want to check out your article, actually. Did you throw it in the chat? Here it is. Yes. Let's check out Steven's article. Anyway, I like pandemic cards as a good example of a game that has a bunch of cards, but they're very systemic. They're not very componential, except for the event cards. I think those are more componential. But these player cards are pretty, and the infection cards are both quite systemic because they just have one very fixed. You're interacting with them constantly. There's many things that you can do with them. So they have pretty high coupling with the rest of the system. Yeah, I wonder what people think about that example. We should read the coupling article. It just referenced patrol zones. Okay, here we go. So this is an article by Stephen. Coupling in game design. Written in December 11 of 2016. I wonder sometimes how many game designers are familiar with the concept of coupling from software engineering and how that applies to games. Coupling is a concept that, broadly speaking, measures the degree of interdependence between elements of a system. When two components are very closely linked such that the implementation of one is strongly dependent on understanding of the implementation of the other, we say that they're strongly coupled. When many different components of a system are dependent on each other, we say that the system is highly coupled. So yeah, high coupling. I've actually used this same illustration. I think there's an illustration like this in one of my books. I didn't use the term coupling, but this concept is something that I've talked about a lot. Actually, the example I used back in the early 2010s was you have like a gymnasium floor and you write every rule down on an index card and you place all the index cards down on the gym floor, kind of like this image. And then you take, yarn and you connect all of the rules that are like, sort of deeply connected to each other. And the more interconnected everything is, the higher coupling, I guess, you have, is one way of putting it. When components have fewer connections that are independent only on those other components for which dependency is absolutely necessary, we call that low coupling, right? Yes, and so here's my big thing. Let's go back to my thing really quick before we go further. Why is this good? High coupling is necessary, but not sufficient for depth. You're not working efficiently when you make games that are like this, which are most of our games are like this, or more like this. And games will become more and more like this as time goes on, and that will give us the potential for more depth. It also will give us the potential for more fuck-ups and more failures. And especially when we don't really know what we're doing, there's going to be a lot of, see you, Sebastian, thanks for coming by. There's going to be a lot of fuck-ups when we try to do this. One of those was Escape the Omnicronom, where I think there was a lot that was going on with the development of that, but, I think that was an example where things got worse. And I could talk about that more. Why the heck are you talking about coupling? I already know why he's talking about coupling. In software, strong or tight coupling is considered bad because it makes it very difficult to change or update your code. Even a small change to functionality can end up being a lot of work because it requires changes to multiple different components. High coupling is also very bad for software because it prevents you from breaking down your code into discrete, comprehensible sections and thus understanding the pieces of a system in such a way as to be able to solve problems. A system with only a few components can be a nightmare to work with if they're highly coupled. It's highly coupling, the property of having lots of connections between different elements that I want to look at. I think that this property, which is so bad in software, is actually excellent for games. Yes. This is what I've been saying. Yes. So, I mean, it's funny because, like, sometimes in chat, you can get the impression that me and Steven, like, disagree really hard about shit. But it's not true. I think that we actually agree. Game designers and software designers have opposite goals. When designing software, we want our developers to have a complete understanding. We're interested in making systems that are easy to solve, which means writing code that's simple as possible and that can be viewed and worked on, blah, 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 yep. In games, having full understanding is really bad. That means the game is close to dead, yes. Good games that are deep and robust are difficult to solve. This game gives longevity, gives them depth. But as we add complexity, we make our games harder to learn and increase the mental burden on players. Well, yeah, that's true. Too much complexity becomes frustrating and confusing. So how do we, and then this is, yeah, basically elegance. It's accomplished through coupling. Yeah. By coupling our simple systems together, we can give players clear choices with clear outcomes, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the one thing I would say is like, there's maybe a tone here of like, oh, just do coupling and it's going to be easy. But it's like, what this is actually calling for is like, do game design when normally you wouldn't do game design, and game design's really fucking hard. And, it's calling for us to move in that direction. Okay, an example. Hey, look at this. We recognize this, right? We're looking at that. Recently, I've been playing a lot of David Sirlin's Codex. All the various different systems in the Codex, hand size, tech levels, building damage, they're all very specific. They're all really tightly linked. I mean, I don't think that they're all really tightly linked, but I think that many of them are quite tightly linked, especially coming from Magic. No decision that you make in Codex affects only one of these systems. Every decision has effects on multiple axes, which makes decisions ambiguous and creates strategic depth. Patrol zone is an example. Yep, we just described this, so we don't need to go over it again. Yeah. This is a good answer to why. I mean, I can put this in the why is this good? Boom. There you go. That's why it's good. Short answer. Allows for depth. We can say more depth, more elegance. Answers are similar to why is game design good. It's basically more game design. Okay, let's talk about a couple of these other specifics. What if a rule only affects a single part of the system, is very far-reaching or important, and affects almost all of the players' decisions? Could be. Probably. That's the best answer I can give. It depends on the specifics, but it sounds like it. In the past, you've mentioned the League has more structure than most games. Which of the rules in League are structural? That's a good question and easy to answer. Structural rules, highly structural, some of League's most highly structural rules. Lanes. I mean, lanes with minions, towers. What else very highly structural about League? And that's the biggest thing. Roles are weird. I saw people were having a chat about roles. Yeah, Ryan just mentioned about roles. I guess, yeah, we can write roles. Particularly support and jungle. I guess we could write minions, towers, laning, which is kind of tied in with tied in with the lanes. Let's see. 15 minutes playing a 1v1 Street Fighter thing? That's not true. It's just false. It's not fair to Street Fighter. I don't know. It sounds like someone's angry about League of Legends in the chat. Having just one map with no randomized wrap geometry seems pretty structural. Yeah. Specific map, although it does have some randomized map geometry now. But actually the dragons and jungle plants. Let's just talk about the dragons, because those are especially with the season 10 changes. Fire dragons, mountain dragons, etc. actually change the shape of the map. Yeah. Yeah, those are League's most highly structural rules, I think. I mean, you could even also add, inhibitors is a gray area. Minions waves. Yeah, I mentioned about minions. That is so angry about League. Yeah, Daryl Liel is very angry about League. It's like a protest too much kind of thing. Like a scorned lover. That's what I get. The vibe I get. That you like at one point you loved League of Legends, and then like something, I guess in like 2013, 2012, those years it was quite a huge piece of shit, that game. I remember when it first came out, it was just like everything about it was just so garbage. Almost everything about it. I still think even in those days there was a couple of things that were smart. The one you're controlling one unit concept. They stepped back away from the like grandfathered in World of Warcraft 3 things. Changes the map based on the second dragon, which is a random element, seems less structural than having a static map. No, because no, I disagree. Well, yeah, no, I think it's more rules, and I think they are more structural rules because you're kind of playing around them. You know, they're constantly affecting play. So actually, but that's a good thing. Let's just delete this. All right, static map versus randomizing map. The randomizing map has more complexity overall, and players are playing around that. Most of the early League designers came from World of Warcraft, which really shows. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that the early League days were pretty dark times. I think actually they really started turning it around in a lot of ways around 2015, 2016. And they've kept it going since then. Static map so has more complexity overall, and players are playing. Well, let's do it this way. Both are structural, but the randomizing map has more complexity overall, so it's just more structural rules. Does that make sense? Like, both of them, the map is always affecting you no matter what. So if the map is changing, especially in like a way that players can sort of understand and play around, I kind of think that the randomizing map actually increases the structure. But I can see also the argument that like if it were changing constantly, like if it was just like rapidly changing all the time, that it would actually become less structural. But I think that because the map only changes, I don't know, 6 times or something throughout a match, something like that, typically, and at very fixed, understandable points, I think that it makes it more structural, but I don't feel super strongly about that. What else do we have to answer here? I think we've kind of answered a lot of these questions. This part does not make sense to me because I remember Solar Settlers, you had a design doc for how you would change it, and one of the things was adding fixed features to the map to make it more structured. Yeah, totally. I mean, I think... Yeah, so if you're just starting with a totally blank canvas, like let's say League of Legends was just a big empty rectangle or square, and then you added the current geometry of like just the basic Summoner's Rift, that would be making it more structured. But I think that having rules about like how that map could change could make it even more structural. But I don't feel strongly about that. I mean, I think that it really depends on how. So, like for example, like let's say there's a rule about like tunneling through walls. Like let's say there's a character who can build more negative space, and there's characters who tunnel through negative space. That would be a certainly more systemic rules, even though the map is changing. So I don't think that map never changing is necessary for structure, for it to be a structural rule. But I think if you're starting with a blank canvas, which is kind of how I see Solar Settlers map, then I think that adding some fixed things, whether they change or not, is going to add structure. To me, it seems like completely randomized map is on the other end of the structure spectrum than set constant map. If it's like constantly randomizing, then I agree with you. If like every 5 seconds it's just like completely a different shape, then I certainly agree with you. But I think if it's only changing a few times, if a little bit of randomization is actually more structure than a set map, it could be. Because think about it this way, like, and League is not the best example of this, but let's say that the map, that, let's say mid lane is just closed off at the beginning of the game, and you know that when you kill this dragon, the map is going to change so that mid lane opens up. You can see how that's like more structure, right? Because it's like there's more rules there to play around. And theoretically, that's what should be happening with the League of Legends maps. And I think probably at the highest levels, players are actually playing around that a little bit. I actually think that the maps, that's not random. Well, it's input random in League of Legends. So the order is random, but the way that the map will change is predictable and can be played around. So it's not like, oh shit, the map is just like some weird shit all of a sudden, And if that were the case, I think that actually maybe we could talk a little bit about output randomness, input randomness, and that's relationship to systemic rules. Maybe we can add like, in a way, affects major parts of the game, and player strategy. Something like that, because if it's like sort of like random noise is just happening all the time, that's not necessarily adding, even though those are systemic rules. Actually, let's put this here. Let's put this here. Where was it? Here. Yeah. Systemic rules may not add structurality if those systemic rules are highly output variable. Well, actually, I think it's mostly output random. And can't be sort of incorporated into the into like the sort of like chain of meaning being strategy being built by players. Let me catch up on the Darrell chats. I don't want us to turn this into shitting on or defending League, but the biggest issue I have with laning is that it mostly limits your options. There isn't a triangle going on that gives you options when a matchup isn't going your way for whatever reason. Yeah, I think most of that complaint is valid. I think that they've tried to make some choices in League of Legends. Like they sort of believe in the idea of a team game. And I think that maybe from what that complaint sounds like, that you personally want to have the ability to change the course of the match. And this is one of the fundamental problems with team games is that you can't have that. Like you could have that if the game was really loose. And I think that Dota 2 is a lot looser in certain ways, and there's a lot more possibilities and things to latch onto. Maybe Smite is like that as well, where you personally can just win the game for the whole team. I personally think that that's, if we're accepting team games, that's a bad idea, is to have a player be able to make choices on their own that that can change the course of the game. But I fundamentally oppose team games for that reason. But if you do have a team game, then it seems to me it makes sense that there's going to be these situations where you personally just, you can't do anything about it. I'm saying about fulfilling your role. I've never had a trouble filling my role in League of Legends, I don't think. Let's see. Like, having a triangle to me is the way forward with regards to structure. Yeah. And he's talking about, like a strategy triangle, like countering various things, rushdown, econ, that kind of thing. Having triangle to me is the way forward with regards to structure. Just make sure everything is aligned somewhere on the triangle and you always have some options. Right. I mean, some of the options in a team game are based on telling your teammates to do things and asking your teammates to do things. If you lose top hard, you're just useless to your team. I mean, that's not true. That really depends on your character. Certain characters, that is true, and those characters should be deleted from the game. So I've been playing Ornn a lot recently. I think Ornn is a great character, and he's also a character that has really high utility. So like he has like a lot of slows and a lot of CC and things like that. And he also has this weird thing where he like can upgrade other players' items, things like that. So Ornn is a character that even if I fall behind, I'm always at least kind of useful. There's a lot of characters that are that way. And I sort of think that, especially for top, which has all kinds of problems, I sort of think that all characters should have the ability to be useful to the team even when they're behind. The characters that are the worst this way are like assassins and glass cannon mages, which I think are already bad for the game anyway, just should be deleted just outright, no matter what. But on top of that, they also do have this problem of like their only thing that they can do is fucking carry and like get pentakills and shit. And if they can't do that, then they are really just useless. Like Katarina or something like that really comes to mind as a character who like Katarina wants to just go in there, cast her ultimate, and get like 5 kills. And if she can't do that, she is kind of useless. That's true. And so there's some characters that are that way, and that's really true. League is really unplayable doing to have 150 characters. It's really competential that way. There are way too many characters. I won't fight anyone on that. That's for damn sure. They should delete like 80% of the characters, probably. And yeah, and the other problem with like top specifically is that you're so disconnected from everyone else. You're so far away from everybody else that when you're losing top, particularly, you kind of just have to like hug your tower, and your choice is basically just wait for the laning phase to be over and just try to minimize the damage, stop the bleeding as much as you can. So yeah, there's a couple of problems there for sure. Support is a great role, but it also sucks if your ADC is just trash. What can you do? Well, that's I disagree. I mean, I think support, even if your ADC sucks, is not doing well. So a lot of supports have tons of utility and can. Vision is a major thing that you can and should be doing, and there's more to vision than a lot of people realize. And they've fixed the vision game a lot over the years too. But characters like Thresh or you become the ADC if your ADC sucks. Sometimes some supports can do that. But like I like Thresh a lot, or Leona's pretty good. Characters that again have a lot of utility, and whether they're even if you're super behind in team fights, using those abilities at the right time. You know, getting a Thresh hook at the right times, doing the right initiate, catching someone out, saving one of your friends. Like your one of your teammates gets caught out. You toss him a lantern with Thresh and save him. That kind of stuff is always useful, even if you're way under leveled and stuff. You have levels and items. Levels and items are kind of structural. They're in the middle, kind of, I think. A lot more options to maneuver and negotiate your role during the game, not just during character pick. Well, I mean, I think, unfortunately, because there's so many characters, you kind of have to do some game design in the character select phase. So you have to actually pick the characters that make the game better. And I also do that with banning. Like I typically ban Nasus because I feel like he adds nothing to the game. And I think that just, banning as many of those kinds of characters as possible makes the game a little bit better. It's unfortunate that we have to do that. But yeah. I also, one thing I would say is, like, if I were designing a game like this, like every character would have like a Thresh lantern. Every character would have like a hook or some kind of like CC or some kind of like vision ability or something like that to make it more that no matter what happens, you always have these basic tools that you can use. Maybe it could be that, like, instead of having Flash, which is fucking stupid, maybe every single character always just has like 2 summoner abilities that are high utility. I do agree with that, actually. I tend to dislike games where you pick characters, though, rather than build your character through choices in the game. Yeah, I think that's true. If I designed League, I'd rotate out the old characters. Yeah, that's not... Well, they're kind of doing that by redesigning them, actually. A lot of characters have gotten these huge redesigns. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, the whole pick stage, especially in a team game, it's such a nightmare. What a stupid, stupid concept. And then they have, like, the runes and shit. Like, I hate League of Legends as much as everyone else. Don't get me wrong. League of Legends is a complete piece of shit. Unfortunately, all games are moving towards having characters, and that's really awful. Well, I don't think characters is necessarily a problem. You just have to make sure that one, you don't allow people to pick the characters. Characters should be randomly assigned. That's never going to happen, but that's what we have to do. 2, you have to make it that all characters have utility and options. There shouldn't be like these domination-based characters. Classes is a good way of thinking about that, I think. MOBA would have been so much better if it came from Diablo rather than Warcraft. Interesting. I wonder why you're saying that. Diablo MOBA idea? I don't know what that means. Is that they're like random loot drops? One thing I will say that I do like about Diablo MOBA is Diablo has randomly generated maps. I think that should be Zombicide. Okay, I will. Also, yeah, I will. Let's talk about. So I'm gonna add some things here. What were those other games that you were telling me about in chat? Daraliel. Let's see if I can find it real quick. You were just Soldak games. Let's just write a note about those. Yeah, so we'll play those as well. So we're supposed to have another design discussion on Monday. I might steal that as a Gem Wizards Tactics Day, though, because I'm still sort of falling behind on that. And then Tuesday we'll play a game. I'm thinking about doing maybe Fantasy General on Tuesday. Awesome, No More Birds. Thanks so much for coming by. Yeah, I'm about to wrap up soon anyway, but I do think this was a good one also. It's important that characters are relatively static in game. It's already a burden to know what your opponent and teammates can do. Yeah, and that's why like runes are like, ugh. I mean, they don't do that much, but like the idea that you have to configure a rune page and shit, oh god. So I use this app called blitz.gg when I play. Oh, stream is cutting? Buffering? Are you sure, Tribound? It might be you. Because before someone said that, and it was them. It appears, according to my yeah, my stream, it says my stream quality is good. Sorry about that, Tribound. Okay. Well, anyway, what I was going to say, unfortunately, Tribound, we're about to wrap up, but you should definitely catch up on this one. I think this was a good one. So yeah, we will play Fantasy General in the future. Oh yeah, runes. That's right. That's what I was talking about. When I play League of Legends, and I recommend you do this too, don't fuck with the runes. Just download this stupid app called blitz.gg and it'll automatically just pick like the most common rune page for your character and your role. And I do that. I have actually refused to learn about the rune system. I've been playing League for 5 years and I've never learned about the runes because I resent the runes so much. I just completely ignore it. I have an app automate it. It's fine. Diablo characters are really flexible for builds, plus the random gear is so much better than static items. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think League should move in that direction. I think they are making, by the way, that is something they're concerned about. They do try to do that. So jungle used to be more like less like how you're saying, and they've changed. Or I'm sorry, I have this backwards. Support used to be like how you're saying. Support used to be like you couldn't itemize at all. That's what they call it, itemization. That's kind of like what you're talking about. And you couldn't do that at all. Now support actually has a good number of support items, and you can actually itemize a good amount. And I think jungle actually has a bit of issues with itemization now. They made support do mini games. Not really. I mean, you do the same thing that you would always do. It's basically they made support interact a little bit with the last hitting system. For one of the support items, and then it's a little bit weird. I agree. And then the other one is like the blue one, the magic one. Like you're just going to be harassing anyway, and now when you harass, you get some gold out of it. It is a weird thing. The whole system with gold and support never really made sense. It's that needs to just be redesigned from the ground up, unfortunately. I liked old runes. It was fun sneaking a 1% crit rune, and it would make your opponent assume you have way more crit runes. See, yeah, I mean, that kind of shit. Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's fun, but that's not good. That's bad. Like, you shouldn't let that be a part of the game. Anyways, so Monday we're going to do some Gem Wizards Tactics. Tuesday we're going to play some Fantasy General, which I think everyone should check out. That'll be fun. And that's a hard game, but it's got a lot of really cool things to it. I also really want to show you guys Master of Magic, a very brilliant game. Probably we should do more Gem Wizards Tactics on Wednesday. Wait, do I have these weeks wrong? I think I do. No, I don't. This is weird. So we did structure. Oh yeah, I see what's going on. We did structure there. So yeah, and we'll come up with, there's going to be some shit we're going to be arguing about on the Discord by Thursday, I'm sure. I still intend to play Hades. I don't know if it's necessarily super important. There is the new Doom. Doom Untitled or whatever it's called. Untilted. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for coming by, everybody. If you have more thoughts, comments, questions, of course, direct them to the Discord, and we will talk about them more going forward. I hope that this has been a little bit illuminating. And yeah, thanks for popping in. See you soon.